Hey guys, Victor here again, coming at you with another retro deck profile for the September 2011 format. And today's focus is going to be on the fan favorite Worm archetype. Not much to say. Ever since its inception, Worms have always been like a rogue deck. However, just because it's a rogue deck doesn't mean that it's bad. In the hands of the right player, especially during this format, this deck is more than capable of taking games off of any of the top tier decks. So, with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the deck profile. So kicking off the monster lineup, we're going to be playing 3 Worm Cartaros. This card's pretty good. It's your main searcher for the deck, as whenever it's flipped, you get to add 1 level 4 or lower Worm type monster from your deck to your hand. And the card that you typically want to add with this would be Worm Zex. And Worm Zex is a fantastic card because whenever this card is normal summoned, you're able to foolish any single reptile monster that's a worm from your deck to the graveyard. And the card that you typically want to foolish with Worm Zex is, of course, Worm Yagan. And these two have like a lot of synergy with each other because Worm Yagan, when it's in the grave, can special summon itself in face-down defense position while you control a Worm Zex. And then, Worm Zex additional effect is if you have a face-up Worm Yagan, it cannot be destroyed by battle. And then you combine that with Worm Yagan's flip effect, which is where when it's flipped face-up, you can compulse any monster your opponent controls. And yeah, the combo is honestly like just really, really good. It's dependent on you opening up cards such as W Nebula Meteorite, which we will be going into detail later on in the deck profile. And then for the final Worm lineup, we are going to be playing 2 Worm Kings. Not much to say. This is going to be your main boss monster of the deck. You can tribute summon it by tributing 1 face-up attack position reptile worm monster. So if you're like getting desperate and you drew this card, unfortunately, instead of being able to summon it with the meteorite, it's still easy to bring out because it just takes 1 tribute summon. And then it's also spot removal because you can tribute 1 reptile worm monster to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Honestly, that effect doesn't really come up too often because you typically want to keep your worms on the field to generate more advantage with them, but there are certain times where you just have to get rid of a card in order to progress the game state. And that's it for the Worm lineup, but not the monster lineup. So for the additional monsters, we're going to be playing 2 Thunder King rai-oh. This is pretty much a stun deck at heart, so we're going to be playing 2 Thunder King because Thunder King belongs in pretty much every stun deck. We're also going to be playing 2 Effect Veiler and 2 Maxi, just, you know, generic staple hand traps. Standard lineup, not much to say. And then for our final monster, we're going to be playing 1 Honest. Every card in here that you can normal summon or would want to normal summon is a light monster, so playing something like Honest is a no-brainer. It can always catch your opponent off guard because they'll think your monsters are weak and weenies, and then you just drop this, and then you can just turn the tide of the games instantly. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can move on to the spell portion of the deck. Much like every other stun deck or rogue deck, we are of course going to be playing 3 Pot of Dualities to start off our spell lineup. Not much to say. This deck appreciates the consistency boost that Pot of Duality offers it, so we're going to be playing 3 of it. And then we're just going to be playing a bunch of good 1-of power spells. So we're going to be playing the 1 Heavy Storm, the 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, the 1 Book of Moon, the 1 Monster Reborn, and the 1 Dark Hole. And with that, that pretty much finishes up our spell lineup, so we can move on to the trap portion of the deck. Now, when it comes to the traps, this one specific trap is the reason why worms are able to compete, and that just happens to be the aforementioned W Nebula Meteorite. This card is insane. You always want to be able to get access to it, so if you have duality and you reveal this, you will always take this pretty much guaranteed, unless, you know, your hand's already cracked. But this card is just, it does everything for this deck. So what it does first, it changes all face-down monsters on the field to face-up defense position, right? So you typically want to hold off and use this after you've done your Zex Yagan combo, because if you use it on like a Cartaros, for example, they could just run it over and then you won't get the additional effects. You want to be sure that the cards you flip survive until the end of the turn, and that's because during the end phase, you change all face-up light reptile monsters you control to face-down defense position, so you could bounce back, or not bounce back, but you can reset your Zex and your Yagan, and then you draw 1 card for every single light reptile that you basically Book of Moon. And then after that, you can additionally special summon 1 level 7 or higher reptile monster. So you're going to draw a couple of cards, you're going to reset your Yagan so we can flip and return another monster again, and then you're going to be able to special summon your Worm King, which honestly, if this deck was even slightly better, I would not have been surprised if this card would have actually been hit on the list at one point, but luckily worms aren't the greatest deck, so we don't really have too much to worry about. But yeah, like I said, if you have access to this, you're in a really good position to already win the game. So you just have to be a little bit smart when to use it. And then after that, we're going to be playing just some staples. We're going to be playing 2-dimensional prisons because it's D prison. And then we're also going to be playing 2 Fiendish Chain. So I opted to play Fiendish Chain over Offering to the Snake Deity, mainly because of the fact that it does 2 things. One, it negates face-up monster effects, which is huge because this format is littered with cards like Thunder King rai-oh. And then second, it prevents monsters from attacking. So say your hand is pretty weak, right? And you want to be able to, this would be one of the situations where you could actually get to the worm Cartaros to be able to use it for like max potential. So you go W Nebular Meteorite after you Fiendish Chained, you flip your Cartaros, you search for Worms X, and then you reset the Cartaros for next turn, draw 1, special summon Reptile King, and you just pop off from there. Just plays like that go a long way in helping you maintain momentum and winning the game outright. I don't know. I really enjoy this card, and I feel it just does way more for the deck than Offering to the Snake Deity, which requires you and your opponent to basically have 3 cards on field every single time in order for it to actually resolve. And then after that, we're going to be playing the 2 Solemn Warning because it's Solemn Warning, along with the 1 Solemn Judgment. Not much to say, good cards. And then a bunch of 1-ofs in the form of Mirror Force, Torrential, Starlight Road, and Trap Dust Shoot. And with that, that's the main deck. It's of course 40 cards like always, and now we can finally move on to the extra. Now when it comes to the extra deck, honestly, you have a lot of choices that you can make, and it doesn't really matter because the extra deck is incredibly flexible for this type of deck, since you only really ever want to make rank 4s with your Zeks and Yagans, but even then that's kind of like a waste of resources. You'd much rather just keep them on the field and only go into cards like Xyz or Synchros if you're able to like push ahead and guarantee that you can win the game, or if you're coming from behind and are a little desperate. So that's the reason why I'm not really gonna go over it too much in detail. The only ones that I feel are actually like mandatory are number 39 Utopia, Stardust Dragon, Trish, and Chimera Tech. So these 4 pretty much cover every single base, as Utopia is able to act as like your secondary beat stick, right? So in case you didn't notice, outside of Worm King and Thunder King, every single monster is pretty weak. So there are times where, like, say you're playing against TGs or something, and you're just in need of like a beat stick. So you go into like Utopia, and he'll hopefully solve most of your problems. And then you also have the Stardust Dragon because we play Starlight Road, which means Stardust Dragon is going to be mandatory. We play Trish because Trish is just an incredible card that can always swing the momentum in your favor. You just summon it by normal summoning your Veiler plus 2 level 4s. So just save this if you for sure want to be able to go for game. And then Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon because, well, you never know when you're going to be playing against a machine deck. You just side in your Cyber Dragons, summon it, contact them away, and then you just go for game. But yeah, there's like tons of extra deck cards you can play. Like you can play Steelstorm Roach, you can play the Zen Meister, you can play Catastor, you can play Super Poly Target, just because like the extra deck for this deck is so empty, I guess, in a way, that you can get away with like a lot of different tech options. So with that, that's the Worm deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!